Hello high power owners, Mark Allen here for BHSpringSolutions. We're here today to talk about the accuracy of the high power pistol design. And our conversation is going to include the FN Browning high power, all of the clones, the lookalikes of the FN Browning high power. That would be your FM out of Argentina, as well as the FM Detective, the FEGs, the early Kareens, Charles Daly's, Ingliss. There's a Mauser 80 single action. Our conversation also includes your Kareen Mark II and Mark III, your Arcus 94s, your Arcus 94C, and your Arcus 98 double action and double action compact. Those are high power inspired handguns. Everything we're going to talk about applies to all of those. You guys that use the safety fast shooting system, the SFS system, this conversation also it's also applicable to you as well. We want to start out by talking about the high power. The reason we're going to talk about its accuracy is because we believe the high power pistol design is just one of, if not the finest semi-auto pistols ever designed and ever made. Before I go any further, I do want to give you one admission here. The high power pistol design is so robust, is so good, that many high powers continue to function on and on, not optimally, but they will function on and on with worn out springs for a long, long time because the design is so perfect. However, when I said not optimally, I'm going to explain to you why not optimally applies, because there are some margins here that we're dealing with that are so close, that are so fine, that accuracy will become affected if two of your springs are not maintained in healthy condition. It's going to affect your accuracy. We're going to start out with some basics. Before I do, every handgun here has been triple checked empty. There is no ammunition in the room for safety. Having said that, I want to cover some basics with you right up front, and then we're going to get into the real meat of the presentation. First concept we want to talk about: the high power tilting or unlocking barrel design. Watch as the slide comes rearward. Watch the barrel unlock and tilt downward. You saw that happen. As it comes forward, it now comes back up. When that barrel tilts downward in the rear, the barrel moves in what I call the business end up here. The importance of that we're going to talk about, but just for right now, understand when that slide starts to recoil, it does unlock the barrel, and the barrel does move, it does tilt downward. Three different kind of recoil springs we want to talk about real quick. This is a manufacturer's recoil spring. It's a 17-pound standard for a high power, but I want to show you the ends. We call this a cut coil design. This one has a cut coil on both ends. In other words, when the spring was being manufactured, when it got long enough, the coil was cut, and that was where the work stopped. This is an 18.5-pound aftermarket spring. It has a closing coil on one end, creating a flat surface, and it has a cut coil at the other end. This was in my carry high power for about 2,000 rounds, and you might even notice it's starting to actually spread out at this end. And then this is a BHSpringSolutions recoil spring. We have created a proprietary design for closing our coils at both ends. It creates a flat surface at both ends, and this end is purposely tighter than the opposite end, not for your guide rod. This is the end that goes in the slide, and we're going to talk about some of the virtues of this here particular design as well. Why is this subject so important when it comes to high power accuracy? Well, let me put this in the proper context. We're going to take the education just a little bit a step further. This control of the slide's recoil is influenced by two things. First of all, you have resistance caused by the mainspring. It's a spring that looks like this. That spring is located on your hammer strut. It is up inside the grip frame in the rear. And it is the tension that you feel when you manually cock that hammer. It is also the energy when you pull the trigger that causes that hammer to go forward. When the slide recoils, it has to cock this hammer, so it's coming against the resistance of the hammer. It's also coming against the resistance of the recoil spring. Remember, I talked about how this barrel tilts downward. Okay, what we're working with here is we're working with something more than about 4 inches of barrel, 4 5/8 total length on a standard high power barrel. The distance that this slide recoils before that barrel starts to unlock is between 1/8 and 3/16 of an inch, or for you metric thinkers, that's about 4 millimeters. So bullet has to travel more than 4 inches out end of barrel before the rearward slide has traveled only about 4 millimeters. Otherwise, if this slide gets going too fast, too soon, and unlocks that barrel, you're going to have your accuracy is going to suffer, because yes, it is possible for bullet to still be in barrel when this unlocking action happens where the barrel unlocks from the slide. I know this from experience. I had this 18.5 pound aftermarket spring in my carry high power for about 2,000 rounds. When I first put it in my carry high power, I was only ejecting standard pressure ammunition about 2 feet, 3 feet, literally barely getting it out of the gun. After 2 years and about 2,000 rounds, I'm ejecting empty brass 14 to 16 feet away from my high power as I was shooting. Interestingly enough, this was still an 18.5 pound spring. And for you guys that don't understand, when we talk about a 17 pound spring or an 18.5 pound spring, that is as measured from a fully compressed state. How much weight can that spring push outward as it's going from fully compressed to relaxed? When we measured this spring, it still pushes 18.5 pounds. But I had gone from extraction of empty shell casings from a couple feet to 14 to 16 feet. Something's going on there. What is going on there is this cut coil has become weak. It's like the weakest link of a chain. And what is happening is the slide was getting an unfair head start on the spring, if you will, during recoil. Accuracy, as you can imagine, was suffering in that equation. So we wanted to change that with our recoil spring. We've closed both ends. We have a proprietary design, and it's intended to give you the whole spring, where the whole spring is the resistance. You're getting the entire spring, not the entire spring after this cut coil collapses. The entire spring from the moment of the beginning of recoil all the way back to where the slide comes back into battery when it's coming forward. We took this design of our recoil springs. You can see another video online of a mechanical cycling machine taking one of our recoil springs through 10,000 mechanical cycles. After 10,000 mechanical cycles, our recoil spring had lost about 1 millimeter and about 1/2 pound of resistance. Still well within usable specs for that particular recoil spring. We took it a step further. I personally took my carry high power through 200 consecutive rounds, as fast as I could shoot them, out of 32 round magazines and 17 round magazines, because we wanted to see, is this spring product that we're marketing for the high power, is it impervious to that kind of heat, to that kind of abuse? Afterwards, the spring was too hot to touch. Everything in my pistol was too hot to touch. My barrel has this kind of a complementary scorched brown tone on the outside of the barrel because it got that hot. still a fantastically accurate pistol, and our spring was impervious to that kind of abuse and to that kind of a heat range. And so that's the measures that we've gone to with our spring product. It is important because this is what is completely controlling that rearward slide velocity. We look for extraction of empty shell casings in the 4 to 6 to 4 to 8 feet range approximately from the handgun. We've found that when we're seeing extraction in the 4 to 6 to maybe 8 feet range, the accuracy seems to be excellent. And we don't seem to be having this issue of premature barrel unlocking from slide kind of a concern. And you have to remember, you've only got 4 millimeters of margin here as this slide starts to recoil, and that bullet has got to already have left end of barrel when that slide recoil starts to happen. The importance of having a healthy mainspring and a healthy recoil spring, we just cannot overstate that for your high power and for your high power's accuracy. BHSpringSolutions now supplies you 40 Smith & Wesson guys. We've got your beefy recoil spring, closing coils again at both ends of that spring. You guys that are lucky to have the 4-inch barrel Arcus 94C and the rare Kareen compact, and you Arcus 98 double action compact guys, you have a particular compact recoil spring for your handguns. You FM detective guys, you have a unique two spring, a spring inside a spring, recoil spring for your FM detectives, for you guys lucky enough to have one of those. It's a great engineered spring. This is also really light gauge spring wire. It's very important that you keep healthy recoil springs in your FM detective to both protect your firearm and to maintain the accuracy and the timing of the unlocking of the slide and barrel during recoil. You full-size 9mm Browning guys and the identical clone lookalikes for the Browning, the 17-pound, and remember, everything I'm saying assumes a healthy mainspring. 17-pound is your standard. Typical standard pressure ammunition you should be seeing with our 17-pound spring about 4 to 8 feet of extraction distance. We do have an 18.5-pound spring. I do use a plus P 147 grain for carry out of my high power. The 18.5-pound spring brings that extraction right back where I want it, but in that 4 to 8 feet range with plus P ammunition. Any of you guys who maybe reload and do light reloads, we have a 15-pound full-size recoil spring. You Kareen and Arcus 94 guys, Kareen Mark II and Mark III and Arcus 94 guys, you have a slide that is a couple ounces heavier than a typical high power. 15-pound spring is your standard. 17-pound is our recommendation if you do any shooting of plus P ammunition. Also, you Arcus and Kareen guys, you have a unique mainspring. It's not equivalent to a Browning mainspring. You have a special mainspring for your handguns. You SFS guys, you have a unique mainspring. You Arcus 98 owners, you have a unique mainspring. All of our BHSpringSolutions complete spring kits, when you choose the spring kit for your handgun, we include the correct mainspring. We also developed a mainspring tool that allows you to easily change out your mainspring if you're into that without buying a hammer strut to go along with it. One thing is certain, the high power wears out springs just when they're installed in the handgun. Every coil spring is compressed in the high power, and when a spring is compressed, it's exerting energy outward. Nothing exerts energy forever, maybe except the sun. So keeping healthy springs in your high power is just critical, and it's going to assure that the timing of the unlocking of the barrel during your shooting is maintained in an optimal condition, and your accuracy will be maintained when you take the time to keep fresh springs in your high power. I'm Mark Allen for BH Spring Solutions.